y'all, so today I'm finally going to be doing a book haul. Initially, I didn't think that I would have that many books to haul because there was a period during like January and February where I wasn't really buying books, and then ever since then I haven't really purchased that many books. But then when I went back and I watched my last book haul and I looked at my shelves, I realized that there were several books that I bought on break, like around the time right after I filmed that book haul, that I totally forgot that I hadn't included in that book haul. So I am going to be showing those to you today, as well as the ones that I have gotten within the past month or so. So I'm going to start out with those books that I got back in late December and early January, most of which are books that I got at used bookstores. First up is The Musician's Daughter by Suzanne Dunlap. This is a book that I see at used bookstores all the time, which may not be a great sign, but it's always intrigued me, and I finally decided to just go ahead and buy it because it was $2. This is a historical fiction that's also a mystery because the main character is trying to figure out some sort of details surrounding her father's death, but as you can see on the cover, it also deals a lot with music because the main character works for Haydn, which is a composer during that time period. I'm not a huge historical fiction person, but it is also a mystery and it deals with music, which are two things that I really love, so this one has always really intrigued me and I finally picked it up. This next one isn't a book that I purchased, but it is one that I brought from home back here, so I figured I'd go ahead and show it, and that is The Boys Next Door by Jennifer Eccles. I talked about this a lot at the end of the year. I'll link a video up in the cards where I talked about it. Basically, this is just a fun, cute, romantic comedy contemporary book, and I really enjoyed it as a teenager, and I reread it at the end of 2016, and it's just really ridiculous, lots of fun, and I wanted to have a copy on my shelves. Next up is Ready or Not by Meg Cabot, which is the sequel to All American Girl, which is one of my long-standing favorite books. I read this right after it came out, and I don't think that I was really ready to be reading this at my age because it deals a lot with some mature subjects, so I didn't really like it the first time I read it. I haven't reread it, but I did want to go ahead and buy it because it was really inexpensive at a used bookstore, and I do definitely want to go back and reread it at some point. Next up is What Light by Jay Asher, which I did get at Half Price Books, but it is a new copy and it's also a signed copy. Not gonna lie, this premise has not grabbed me as much as the premises of his other books, but I do really like Jay Asher as an author, and I definitely wanted to go ahead and pick this up because he is an author that I really like, and I'm hoping to enjoy it once I do jump into it. Next up is Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie, which is a Poirot novel. To be perfectly honest, I can't remember if this is a book that I bought recently or if it's one that I bought back in the summer and then brought from home recently, but either way, this is a new addition to these bookcases here, and I figured I should go ahead and show it to you. Next up is Dark Fever by Karen Marie Moning. This is a book that was super popular on BookTube maybe a year or two ago, and a lot of people said it was super addicting, which is something that always intrigues me. And I never picked it up during that time, but I was always curious about it. And I ended up picking it up for a book tag, which was the Try a Chapter tag back in December, and I read the first chapter and was intrigued by it, and then I saw it at a used bookstore a couple days later and it was like $2, so I went ahead and got it. I still have yet to pick it up and read it, but it is definitely one that I'm really curious about. Then very quickly, I did buy a new copy of City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. This was at a used bookstore for $3. It's in really good condition and I wanted to have a hardcover, so I got it. Next up are 3 books from the Lux series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. First, I have Beginnings, which is the first 2 books, and then I have Opposition. I actually found each of these at Half Price Books for $2 a piece, and I was in the process of reading the series when I found these there, so I went ahead and got them. So far, I have yet to move on to book 2 in the series, but this is still definitely one that I do intend to read, so I will hopefully be getting to these sometime in the near future, and obviously near is relative. And yes, I do hate those book covers, and I do hate book bind-ups, but the original covers were just as bad, if not worse, and those were so cheap, so why shell out money for equally bad covers when I can just get those even though they're bind-ups, which I honestly hate more than the covers. This next book is the last one that I got over that winter break book buying binge, and that is The Black Prism by Brent Weeks. Reagan from Peru's Project absolutely loves this book and raves about it, and the premise of the magic system in the world sounds very similar to Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, and so that had me really intrigued, and so I went ahead and picked it up. I still haven't gotten to it, but this is definitely one that has piqued my interest a lot, and I do definitely intend to get to it again sometime in the near future. Near is relative. So then over spring break, my parents and I were traveling, and we ended up going to a lot of half-price books, and at one of those I found this copy of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. So you're probably like, Kristen, you already had 2 copies of this book, and one of them was a really cool edition, so why did you get this? And that's because when I first read this book, which was either in 2009 or 2010, I can't remember, I borrowed a copy from my friend, and she had this edition. So I first read this book in this edition. So it kind of holds a special place in my heart, and I never found it for inexpensive anywhere. And so when I found this at half-price books for pretty cheap, I decided to go ahead and get it. So now I do have 3 copies of And Then There Were None, but I feel no shame about this because I love that book, and I have several copies of Harry Potter, so why not have several copies of And Then There Were None? So while we were traveling, for some reason there was one book that was like really piquing my interest, and I really wanted to pick it up and read it, and no used bookstores had it, and I just kept wanting to buy it, so I ended up just buying it full price at Barnes & Noble, and I don't know why because I still haven't read it, and that is Battle Royale. This is a super famous, super well-known dystopian novel that's kind of Hunger Games-esque, where a bunch of students are basically forced to kill each other, and it sounds really, really interesting, and I've always been curious about it, but for some reason while I was traveling I just really wanted to buy it, so I did. And then alongside that at a half-price books, I also found the first 4 volumes of the manga adaptation. So I now have these as well. I'm not going to read these until after I've read the book, because I do want to read the book before reading any sort of adaptations of the book, but I'm definitely really excited to have these, and will probably end up buying the rest of the series sometime in the future. Next up, and the second to last book on this list, is Giant Days Volume 1 by John Allison. This is a comic series that follows 3 best friends who are in college, and it's this really cool feminist girl power story, and I've really enjoyed it so far. I have only read this first volume, but I have multiple other volumes checked out from the library, and so I definitely want to get to those soon as well. Also, FYI, I don't know if this is still the case, but I got this for like $5 on Amazon, and it's definitely worth it, so go ahead and get yourself one because that's pretty inexpensive for a comic. And then finally, the last book in this haul, and also the most exciting, my pride and joy, The Song Rising by Samantha Shannon, and this is the collector's edition that is signed by Samantha Shannon. Here's her signature on the title page. As y'all know, this is my favorite ongoing series. I absolutely love this series. I haven't jumped into this book yet, but I did the same exact thing with the Mime Order when it came out. I do hope to get to this one soon, sooner than most of the other ones where I've said I want to get to it soon, but definitely I'm so excited to have this book. I'm so excited to finally be able to read this book sometime soon-ish. I'm still definitely in a pretty strong reading slump, but I am starting to try to do things to pull myself out of it, so hopefully I will be reading a lot of these books in the fairly near future, because I did say that I want to get to all of them pretty soon. So that is it for this book haul. I did film this back-to-back with a book unhaul, so depending on which one goes up first, the unhaul will either be linked up in the cards or it will be posted in a few days, so definitely watch out for that because I unhauled a good deal of my books, and I love doing unhauls, and I know everyone loves watching unhauls, so definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention that I have recently started a new series on my channel that is called YA Bandwagoning, where essentially I'm going to be reading the popular YA series, or the first books in those series that I've really been neglecting on my shelves. So the introduction video will be up in the cards, and if this is posted after the first video in that series is posted, that will also be linked up in the cards. As always, I will leave links down in the description to my blog, Twitter, and Goodreads. Please add me as a friend on Goodreads. I would love to be friends with all of you. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you so much for watching.